I am Mark Stewart, candidate for U.S. President with a different take, again, from most Democrat leaders. And it's that Democrat leaders keep trying to promise to save the middle class, to enact government regulations that will keep middle class as it was, a big fat chunk of the American family spectrum. It is waning, and I contend it is a good thing. And I also contend that it can't be stopped. There are some things a president, even a powerful president, can't do. Even a more powerful Congress can't do. Economic forces are more powerful than they are. And to stop the expanding incomes of so many people would be A, impossible, and B, very wrong. Remember, the middle class is shrinking because upper classes are growing. That's a good thing. More people leaving the middle class on the upside rather than on the downside. There will always be some poor people, especially if work and riches from work are related to diligence. People who just don't want to work that hard are not going to get as far ahead. The middle class that was hefty was protected. It stayed intact by a few things that are now gone. The middle class was built up by the Industrial Revolution. It put people who prior to that could barely eke out a living with sustenance farming, and it got many of them off the farms into shops and small industries and then larger industries. They could now be making stuff for others instead of just themselves. When you make stuff from others that others want, you can make more money, whether you are the employer or the employee. Monetary reward coming from the Industrial Revolution. Now, the American middle class became really locked in the 1930s, really 30s all the way up until the 80s. 50 years worth held together in part by strong labor unions in America. I mean, in their heyday, the 60s and early 70s, unions held over 60% of private workers. It's down to about 6% today. They kept stability in jobs, and they did keep workers from being paid exceptionally low. They kept also workers from being paid exceptionally high. That's still true today. America's dominance over world commerce in the 50s and 60s and into the 70s really helped allow unions who paid probably higher than deserved wages to workers, but consumers weren't suffering because of it, because we were reaping so much, because we were so dominant in our ability to sell stuff, the sole provider for the rest of the world. So the high salaries of union workers took very little away from consumers, but that changed. High taxes, really ratcheting up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. By the 1980s, consumers had markedly less. Businesses thus got pinched, and layoffs then weren't any longer due to business contractions like recessions, but due to shareholders demanding more return, more efficiency. By the 1990s, reducing middle management was the right normal thing to do. Replacing workers with technology was lauded, and it became routine. So what workers weren't replaced? The most efficient ones, the especially productive workers. And lots of firms liked those workers. Thus, their salaries went up because they were in higher demand. For the diligent, efficient, best worker, the lack of middle class was a good thing, a way to escape it. By the 1980s, another phenomenon. The majority of homes had two working spouses. Now, that produces more income inequality, too, because if two are getting slightly ahead, collectively, they're getting a lot ahead of the two that remain right in the middle. Finally, 1990s, internet explosion, which allowed workers to not be locked into an industry, and new industries would flourish. Brain power becomes a conduit to wealth. We'd never seen that before. So, none of these developments are bad. We can't put the genie back into the bottle, and we shouldn't. This is a good genie. It's granting great wishes. Middle income as a big fat chunk of the spectrum is not coming back, and that's a good thing because it's more related. Family household incomes are more related to ability. Good work getting better paid. Diligence or brain power or resourcefulness or training. Those are all good skills to have, and they get better rewarded. So when politicians want to keep the middle income group as a big fat class, they're impeding growth. They're impeding the best people from growing businesses that actually make everyone wealthier. The middle class has shrunk. And again, that's a good thing because more people are wealthy. And so long as the super wealthy can't keep the rest of us from enjoying life, and I don't see anyone doing that to me, it's good that super wealthy and fairly wealthy are in abundance. Those who don't like that and would make policy against that want to keep us poor. Please be on the lookout for the nice sounding restoring the middle class when it can't be done and it shouldn't be tried. I'm Mark Stewart.